Welcome to the Crizz's Cheesing It Up. Today we got a special treat for you. We are making cheesy French onion soup. So come along and enjoy. We're going to start with our very first ingredient in making cheesy French onion soup. Here we have 2 medium to large size Vidalia onions. Traditional French onion soup is made more just a regular yellow onion. These are still classified as more of a hybrid yellow onion, but I do like a lot of the sweetness that comes out with both these onions. So let's go ahead, let's get these sliced up and get started. So first, we're going to take our knife and just cut these in half. What a good chopping knife to do this. And I'm actually going to cut these further into fourths. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to peel off the onion. Alright, we just finished chopping up all the onions, and as you can see, relatively uniform. I'm definitely not the best chopper. I'll probably give my effort maybe about a C, maybe C+ here on that front. But when we're making French onion soup, the size of the onions, you just want them to be small enough so they fit in a pan and can cook pretty nicely and relatively uniformly. Some are a little bit thicker than the others. You may have a few that are a little bit more brown, but they can also add a little bit to the flavor of the French onion soup. Now keep in mind, we did use 2 large onions, and this is going to make probably about 5 or 6 crocks of French onion soup, so if you do have more family over or more friends, you just want to make sure that you add an extra onion or 2 here. We're now going to proceed to our next step in making cheesy French onion soup, and probably one of the most critical steps in this entire process, the caramelization of the onions. So this does tend to take a little bit of time. It could take anywhere from 20 to 45 minutes depending on how high your heat is. But generally you're going to want to keep your heat relatively low in your frying pan and let a lot of the sweetness of the onions come out naturally. We're going to be cheating a little bit to speed up that process, and we're going to be adding a little bit of brown sugar, just a tablespoon of brown sugar that I pre-measured out here. We have 1/4 cup of red wine vinegar. Some also use balsamic vinegar, or you can also use an actual cooking wine as well. It really comes down to some of your personal preferences around flavor. We have 3 tablespoons of salted butter, and then we have a little extra salt that we can add to taste as well. This is only a teaspoon. I'm definitely a component of wait to add a lot of extra salt, because if you make something too salty, it's impossible to take out, but you can always add additional salt later on. Alright, and then we also have our fresh ground pepper here. So let's go ahead and start putting this in the pan. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add our 3 tablespoons of butter, and we're going to let that melt for a little bit there. Some people also make this with some olive oil. The traditional way is definitely with butter, and in my opinion definitely tastes better. But if you are looking to save a little bit on the saturated fat front, then you could definitely use olive oil as a replacement. Okay, now that all of our butter has melted, I'm going to go ahead and add the onions now. Alright, looks like the onions just fit in here. So we're going to give this a little bit of time to cook. We want to start them getting a little bit of softness, and then once they get a little bit of soft, then we're going to start adding our other ingredients in. Alright, as you can see here, my onions are starting to get very, very soft. So I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of the ingredients. But you can start to see the caramelization process just beginning to start on a few of these here. So again, I'm adding first the red wine vinegar. As I mentioned earlier, balsamic vinegar, cooking wine as well is also perfectly fine to use. This is 1/4 of a cup. Then we go ahead, I'm going to add my sugar. Going to add my salt. It's 1 teaspoon. And then I'm going to give this roughly about 5 or 6 turns for the fresh ground pepper. All right, let's go ahead and we're going to mix this all together. Now when you put these additional ingredients in, particularly the red wine vinegar, you might just need to turn up the heat a little bit. So I'll turn this up to medium, just get everything hot, then I might just turn it back down to, or I will turn it back down to a low medium. Alright, these onions look pretty nicely caramelized now. This whole process took about 30 minutes or so to get to this spot. Now, some may want their onions a little bit more caramelized, but this is certainly good enough for me, and I think it's going to make for a pretty tasty soup. We're going to go ahead and we're going to add these now to our beef stock that I've been heating up slightly in a separate pan. So you can see I used just beef broth here from College Inn. You can make your own beef broth if you'd like to, but if you're a little bit shorter on time, it's just nice to be able to grab some of these boxes. And for our recipe, we used 2 of these 32-ounce boxes. Okay, we're going to go ahead and add our onions in here. Now some may add the beef stock directly into the pan. This pan I'm using is a little bit more shallow, so it'll be a little harder to do that. But when you're able to do that, you do soak up a lot of this nice buttery flavor if you do have a pan that's deep enough. Okay, so we went ahead and we added all these onions. Again, I expect to get probably about 5, maybe 6 of crocks of French onion out of this the most. But again, it really depends on how big our crocks are. I use more of a traditional crock bowl, so that's why I probably anticipated getting about 5 out of this. Alright, so now we're just going to put the lid on. I'm just going to let this sit for about 30 minutes or so on low-medium heat. While we're waiting for the onions to finish cooking in the beef broth, let's go ahead and start slicing up this French baguette. There are other types of bread that you can also use in your French onion soup. We've seen a lot of different variations here in the United States, but I still prefer just your plain old French bread. So let's go ahead and slice this up. Now, the trick for French onion soup, some individuals may just break off pieces of the French baguette. I like cutting just relatively thin slices. Now that we've finished slicing the bread, I'm going to go ahead and just put these in our toaster oven. And the reason why I like toasting this a little bit is it does tend to allow the bread to hold together a little bit longer while it's in the soup, especially if it's sitting for a little bit. You don't want to toast it too much, but when you do toast it slightly and it gets just a very little bit of crunch in it, it, again, as I mentioned, holds up a little bit better within the French onion soup. Most French onion soups use Gruyere cheese as the primary cheese ingredient, and it's extremely tasty, very good. It melts nicely just on the very top of the crock. But here at the Crizz's Cheesing It Up, we like to cheese it up a little bit more, just a little bit more, and we use 3 cheeses. So these are the 3 cheeses that we're going to be using today. So first, we do have your traditional Gruyere. However, this is a smoked Gruyere, and it's made by Smoky Park. I've had this cheese before. It's a pretty decent smoky Gruyere option, so we'll go with that one today. And then we also have 2 Italian cheeses. I know, what are we doing? Putting Italian cheese in French soup? But the mozzarella melts really nicely and just adds a little bit more to the cheese. I do prefer fresh mozzarella usually, but in terms of melting a cheese and French onion soup, just your traditional mozzarella is going to taste a lot better. And this one here is Italy's #1 cheese, so I'm presuming we can't go wrong. Then we also have a Parmesan cheese, also made in Italy here, that adds just a little bit more sharpness. It tastes that I definitely like. Again, cheddar cheeses being some of my favorite cheeses, and the Parmesan does add a little bit more sharpness overall to the cheese. So these are the three that we're going to be using today, and let's go ahead and slice them up. All right, we're just waiting for the oven to heat up here. So in the meantime, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna start scooping out our French onion. And it's actually all set here. So I'm probably gonna put about 2.5 ladles in each of these, just making sure they get plenty of onions. So I'm guessing I'm probably going to get roughly about still 4 or 5 cracks. So let's go ahead and add the bread here. All right, we'll do 2 bread pieces here. And we'll see if we can squeeze another half piece in here. All right. So that's just going to lay on top there. And let's go ahead and grab some of our cheese. So the first thing I'm going to do, so I'll put the mozzarella on top. You can see right now it's floating there a little bit, which is perfect. And then we're going to get the Gruyere cheese. I'm going to melt that on top. And I'm actually get another little bit extra there too, just to make sure we are fully covered here on both of those crocks. Cut a little bit extra Gruyere. There we go. There we go. All right, we should be pretty well covered there with cheese. I'm just going to take the little bit left over this mozzarella, put on top there, and now let's get our Parmesan and just get a little extra Parmesan on here. Again, this will add a little bit more sharpness to the flavor. Okay, there we go. All right, we are going to go ahead and we are going to put this in the oven. Preset temperature to 400 degrees, and probably about 5 to 10 minutes. Again, it really depends on how quickly your oven gets hot. But what we're really looking for is, of course, we want all the cheese to melt, and on top of that, you like a little bit of a brownness on that cheese too. So let's go ahead and put it in. All right, our French onion soup. Cheesy French onion soup, excuse me, is now done. You'll notice cheese is pretty well melted on top there. There's a little bit of burnt crisp on the outside. That's exactly what we want. We don't want it to be too burnt, but this should be a very, very tasty French onion soup. So let's give it a try. So as we reflect on this French onion soup, really, really good broth overall. Good bread, really tasty onions. Cheese combination, pretty good cheese combination. I will say that I probably prefer regular Gruyere rather than the smoky version of it in the French onion soup. But overall, really, really good. Try it both ways. Try it with regular and then also try with the smoked cheese as well, and let me know which ones you like better. Until next time, keep cheesing it up.